businesses without power. Since then, MLGW says they have restored 107,000 customers' power. So again, they are making progress, but they say that this still could take several days, with some of the smaller outages lasting into the weekend, and for all customers to take full power. Again, that could be several days, but crews are out. You know, Spencer was just mentioning he was out yesterday in East Memphis, and he saw those crews out. I've been seeing them out driving, so they are working to make progress. We do know that the areas that they're focusing on are the large cluster outages, and that's within the I-240 loop, as well as those smaller individual outages. And so here's some damage there. You can just see just how large those trees were that came down on people's roofs, you know, destroying homes and businesses. And so thankfully we hadn't heard of any severe or any injuries directly with this. Everybody that we've talked to who has seen power lines and trees in their areas and neighborhoods, thankfully no reported injuries of that. So again, will be interesting to hear an update on the progress that they're making. I know that there are crews from out of town once again that are coming in to help to restore power, which is something we've been seeing recently with all of these summer storms that we've been having. But again, at the height of this storm on Tuesday, we had 141,000 MLGW customers, which I believe is actually more than we saw during that really big storm a few weeks ago. I think at the height of that, it was about 130,000. So that was an interesting tidbit there. Again, 107,000 MLGW customers, that's homes and businesses, have been restored, but there are still 30,000 customers in the dark this afternoon. Very frustrating. I've been there. I've had my power out with these summer storms. And so again, just take a look at how large these trees are. I mean, they are knocking down power lines. Look how that tree is uprooted there. So again, just something that we are just continuing to watch for. Spencer, I'm curious about the winds in this from Tuesday, because it's not funny, but we were watching Spencer in my home when the power went out. So, but we were watching you track the storms, and just how strong were the winds?
Those were 60 to 70 mile per hour winds. So they were about 20 or 30 miles per hour less than the big storms that rolled through a few weeks ago. But again, we have so many loose limbs, so many, you know, just from the previous batch. I think that's what shot the power outages up so much, because there was just a ton of those still coming down on the power lines, and that's exactly what happened. And you know, we had it laying down on places in East Memphis, just laying on the road, some of those power lines. So it takes time to, you know, get all that stuff cleaned up, but there was definitely some huge trees in some of those areas that were down as well. So hopefully we can, you know, get the weather to cooperate to take some of the trees down, like what you're seeing there. In fact, that's where I was at, on that area of Shady Grove. That's just off Shady Grove in East Memphis. And I'm telling you, those trees, they came down on each other. They came down onto the houses as well. So hopefully we can get that cleaned up.
All right, Spencer, thank you for that perspective. All right, I believe Doug McGowan is ready now. Let's take a listen on this update.
How's everybody sound? 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3. Looking for a thumbs up from everybody on your sound, whether it's going to work. I see that. Okay, I'm waiting for, who are we over here? You good with your sound? Okay, yeah. Yeah, I was just waiting for y'all. Okay. Everybody else good? Okay, well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Doug McGowan, the president of Memphis Light, Gas, and Water. Okay, we're here today at our Community Advisory Council at the Memphis Light, Gas, and Water headquarters. We're kind of doing double duty here. We have our Community Advisory Council, a regularly scheduled meeting, but we also, since we have a power outage, wanted to do a press update, so we're doing 2 for 1 here. So I just wanted to start by saying that, if you could go to the next slide, Lillian. This is, no, the next, I'm sorry, just go back. I think that's not the right slide. So far, we have restored power to 110,000 customers. We have about 31,000 customers left to go. So that's pretty significant work in just over a 24-hour period of time that we've been doing that. But we're not going to stop until we have every customer restored. Again, I'm sorry, that's not the right slide, guys. So just take the slides down. The remaining outages are in 6 clusters around the service area. They're generally located in the Fraser area, the Raleigh area, the Burke-Clare area, East Memphis, Germantown, and Hickory Hill. So unlike the last storm where we had significant outages across the entire county, the remaining outages that we have are really clustered in those focused areas. What that means is we'll have a lot of crews, both contract and internal crews, working very in tight quarters, which ups the complexity of the work that they will be doing. So if you're looking for crews, they will generally be in those areas. Our priority is to work on the circuits that are still remaining out. For those that have heard me talk about this before, circuits are the largest part of our distribution system. They generally carry between 1,000 and 1,500 customers. Right now we have 6 full circuits that are still out, and what that, if you want to put that in physical terms, if you've driven down Winchester Road and you saw all the poles down, if you've driven down White Station or Mendenhall and you've seen all of those poles down, those are the circuits that are affecting thousands of customers. So we're focused on doing that because that will bring the most customers back on the most quickly. There are also about 30 plus partial circuits, meaning the entire circuit is not out, but a portion of it we've been able to isolate. Again, that's in the 500 to 700 customers, so we'll be working on those. So with those 2 efforts in those 6 focused areas, that will get the most customers on the most quickly. To do that, we have about 105 crews that are repair crews. We've upped our numbers even since this morning, who are out there actively working. They are supported by 89 tree trimming crews who are clearing the vegetation away so that our crews can make repairs. Any of those trees that you see on lines are being taken down by those tree crews. And they are supported by literally hundreds of other logistics specialists, troubleshooters, administrative personnel, and importantly, safety personnel who are monitoring this, as well as our system operations personnel. Now we will be at this for the next few days. Our estimate for substantial restoration for everybody is by this Sunday. That is too long for many people. But I'm just being realistic that there may still be some customers affected as far as Sunday because of the extent of the damage to the main circuits and the number of individual customers that were affected. In the last storm, we had several hundred individual customers who lost their service. Earlier I guess it was yesterday, we had nearly 800 individual customers who had lost their service. That's a lot of individual work. That means a crew has to go to that particular home and restore their service. Now we're hopeful that when we restore the circuits that their power comes back on, but that number's pretty high, and so we know there's going to be more work to do at the individual level and at the transformer level. So that is the next phase of the work that we'll get into when we get these circuits restored. And so I want everybody to know that we will keep working. We have restored a significant number of customers in a very fast time compared to even the last outage, but we're not going to stop until everybody's power is back on. The last message I have, and I've said this before, is please don't lose hope. This has been an unusual series of outages that we've had. The frequency of them is unusual from our history, and I'm sure I'll have some questions about that. But we have a plan for making our system better. We have the funding to put into place to make the system better, and we have proven in the past in small areas where we have made these changes that reliability will actually get better. And so with that, I will stop and take any questions that people have. So yes, go ahead.
I know you allotted $6.2 million in emergency repair budget since we have seen so many storms that require emergency repairs. How far into that budget are you so far?
Into the $6.2 million budget. That's our projection for the entire duration all the way through Sunday night. So what we do is we take a look at the number of contract crews that come in, the rate that we're going to have to pay them, both regular time and overtime, the number of tree crews that we bring in. So we're probably a third of the way through that today, but that's our projection for the total probable cost. It may come in slightly less, slightly more than that.
All All right, you were listening to a press conference from MLGW President and CEO Doug McGowan. He's giving an update on restoration efforts for the thousands still without power. At last check, there were a little more than 30,000 homes and businesses still without power. He says that they have so far restored power to 110 customers so far. He says that the majority of those are in clusters, of course, in the East Memphis, Raleigh, Fraser, Berkeley, Hickory Hill areas. He says that for the
that I saw some trees cleared from lines over there and some repairs that were made. We have some images of that were sent in, and we actually have some reports of repairs in that neighborhood. So we know there are repairs being made in that neighborhood. For the individuals, there are individuals, and I understand this, that are not necessarily impacted by a power outage, but these storms have actually dropped a tree on their car or their house. And I understand how impactful that is, and I don't want to forget those customers as well. That's not an MLGW responsibility, clearly, but we can sympathize with our customers. It brings me to a good point. If you simply do not know where to turn for resources, if you call 211, they are a wonderful resource that is run by the Memphis Public Library and Information Center, and they can steer you to the resource that you need. If you just don't know where to turn, whether it's, I don't know where to get my food to replace the food that's gone bad, I have a tree on my car, I just don't even know who to call, 211 is a great spot to start because they can direct you to the resources you might need.
And you mentioned that you hope to have the power restored for just about everyone by Sunday. With another round of storms coming through the area, how may that affect the process?
Well, we saw last storm. Unfortunately, it's all too fresh in our memories. June 25th, we had a major storm come through, and we had, as you all reported, we were down to just a few hundred customers to restore, and then July 2nd, we had another, actually 2 rounds of storms come through that bumped us back up to 35,000 out. So that is always a threat of something that could happen. But for today, we're focused on getting everybody back restored as quickly as we can.
And how does, I know last week, I believe, MLGW was focusing on tree trimming. How do these storms kind of take away from, the work that could be done on preventative measures?
Okay, so I'll talk a little bit about tree trimming. When I went to the MLGW Board of Commissioners and to City Council, they have approved contracts for MLGW. They're more than $200 million over 5 years to, first of all, catch us up and keep us on a 3-year cutting cycle. Those contracts have not been executed yet because I have to wait for one more City Council meeting for them to be final for my authority to execute the contracts. When that happens, those tree trimming crews will get to work in earnest. I do have a current contractor that is doing work in selected areas. So, but storm restoration always slows us down because we have to put everybody who's trimming trees to the immediate task at hand, which is not maintenance, but critical restoration and clearing vegetation. But it's a very good point. Just like our crews, when they are putting in infrastructure to make it more reliable, when a storm happens, they have to be pulled off of that work to go do storm restoration. So it's very similar.
Are there any efforts in the rebuilding in terms of fortification for the future? Do they replace the poles with stronger poles?
Oh, sure. Well, that's a great point, and thank you for asking. When I say don't lose hope, there is a plan, and it is funded. In 2018, Memphis Light, Gas, and Water put forth a plan called the Way Forward that was going to start in 2020. It was a 5-year reliability and resilience plan. The 2 years of COVID really put an impact on that because of supply chain and the available personnel to do the work. But that work is still underway. What that does is several things. First, it's a lot of vegetation management that we just talked about. Second, it's replacing infrastructure that you just talked about. Pole replacements, there are thousands of poles that will be replaced with stronger poles, poles that are of a modern standard. Some of the poles that we have in the system are very old and they were not built to a modern standard. There will be new transformers. There will be fewer people on each transformer. There will be fewer people on each power line, which gives you more resilience. There will be some old infrastructure that's replaced along the way. And then there will be automation of our distribution system that also makes you more resilient and allows us to isolate where damage is. So The work that we are doing will bring our distribution system on par with the best distribution systems in the country. The work that we have to be committed to is ensuring that every year we continue to invest in preventative maintenance and also infrastructure to make sure that our infrastructure never gets so old that it becomes fragile and and susceptible to outages. So that's the large part of the work. It's everything from poles to transformers to fuses to our substations. All of that is being reinvested in to make the system more reliable.
Is that something that you're doing now?
Yes, we are doing it now. I was just in the Orange Mound neighborhood. That is one focus area where we have. I'll give an example. We inspected 3,000 poles in Orange Mound, and we we identified 425 that, based on their condition, needed to be upgraded and replaced. We've already done 375 of those. We identified about 135 transformers that needed to be changed. We've replaced 109 of those. So that work is underway in selected areas of the city and the service area. So yes, the work is underway. It's been underway since 2020. It's not just electric though, it's also the water system and the gas system. All of that work is presently underway. Yes, ma'am.
So to that point, I actually have done a little research. In 2019, it was mentioned by MLGW the importance and need for the budget for such maintenance on these poles. I linked down the budget for pole maintenance went down in your budget in 2022, and there was an increase in 2023.
Yes.
So what made you decrease that budget in 2022 after the launch specifically of the Osmond project?
Sure, I'll have to get back to you. I'm not sure exactly what the decrease was in 2022, whether it was availability of poles or availability of the crews to actually come and do that. The goal of changing the poles has never changed, though. The number of poles that need to be changed has never changed. We're actually, I think, on pace. We're on pace for pole replacement to meet the original timeline of pole replacement.
I think we're actually ahead.
A little ahead, yeah.
And then to your point too, in Orange Mound, you're using drones and you can actually see some of the rot and things like that. And so it
Yes.
is commendable in that way. But do you think a lower budget to maintain partner with these drought conditions that we saw, with the winter conditions that we saw, with the extreme weather conditions that we saw this past winter, the short winter, could be contributing to why the poles that we're seeing are failing at such a degree as they are?
No, the budget is, if you saw a one-year budget where the number was slightly lower, I just want you to be clear that there is sufficient funding in the Way Forward plan. It's $1.3 billion. And so, in fact, it's the execution of the budget that we have in hand. So we need to do a better job of executing all the money we have. So there is actually money that was unexpended because of some of the supply chain issues, the crew issues. So it does little to have a high budget number if you're not going to execute on it. So one of the things, and I'll call your attention to the MLGW website. Yesterday, we launched our monthly performance review data portal. So if you go to the MLGW.com website, you can actually see the metrics that we're tracking for our budget expenditures, for all of the Way Forward. You can see the number of poles we've replaced. You can see where we're behind, and we are behind in some areas. But it's all accessible to you, so you can track right along with us our progress. So I hope you'll go there and take a look at MLGW.com and actually look at some of our performances, everything from budget to safety to operations to customer service, and just take a look and see what you think.
But do you think that those contributing factors could be why these poles are failing? The contribution of not using the funds that you said with the drought conditions
Well,
and winter weather?
I guess I would say it like this. I'm going to use a data point because folks are asking, well, is it the weather? Is it the infrastructure? Is it the money? In the last 18 months, we have had 800,000 customers, discrete customers impacted by, that we attribute to major storms. That number is the same as the previous 10 years of major storms. So from 2002 to from 2012 to 2022, we had 800,000 customers impacted by major storms. In the last 18 months, we've had 800,000 customers impacted by major storms. Our infrastructure is only 18 months older at the max. in that period of time. So it's not just the age of the infrastructure. Certainly that contributes, and that's why we have the Way Forward plan. That is a contributing factor. The severity of the weather, the frequency of the weather, and the damage that accumulates is certainly a factor. To your point, it is incredibly important for us to deploy the capital to replace the infrastructure so that we can make it more resilient, and that's exactly what we are going to do.
I wanted to ask about tree trimming, going back to that. The city council voted unanimously to support that.
Yes.
But I wanted to talk about the contractors that were hired for the Missouri City Council committee meeting. You had mentioned that up to that point, with the contractors who were part of the 5-year plan, only 20% of the work had been done. And
Correct.
MLGW only paid for that 20%.
Correct.
More. I was wondering if you had looked into why did only 20% get done?
Well, that's a really good question. Clearly, they did not meet the objectives that were laid out for 1,400 miles of clearing per year. I can only speak to what I know. As you know, I arrived in December. I looked at that data and said that's unacceptable. We have to meet our goal, and so asked the staff to immediately put a plan together to get more contractors here to help us. And so that's exactly what we did. I can't attribute the reasons why. I just know that the data says we didn't meet it. We need to meet it, so I had to take action, and that's what I was focused on, is getting the resources here to get the trees trimmed now. I can't control what happened for the last 10 years.
Are you looking back at all to see what happened with those?
I certainly will if I get a chance to take if I get a chance to have a breath, I will look back. Most important to me is taking action today. I have to take a good assessment of what the circumstances we're facing today, and I have to address those so that our customers don't have to. I'm not standing here in 2 or 5 or 10 years saying, well, we didn't meet the metrics, because I will be responsible and accountable. I am today for getting the job done. This is the chart I was talking about. I apologize for not having it up earlier, but if you see where the blue is, are customers who've been restored. The red are those clusters of customers where I mentioned. You can see roughly in the Fraser and up in the Raleigh, the Berkeley, East Memphis, Hickory Hill, and Germantown areas that I mentioned. That's kind of where those large clusters are. It doesn't mean if you're not in one of those, we're not going to get your power back on. It just means we're going to have a lot of folks in those areas. Other questions? Okay, we will let you know, depending on how things go tonight. If it looks like we'll have another presser tomorrow, we'll have a statement tonight that we'll put out to everybody just to tell you what our progress is so far tonight. We'll try to get that out by about 5 o'clock this afternoon so you all have it, okay? Thank you all very much. I appreciate it. Okay, so while the press is cleaning up, for our Customer Advisory Council, I'm going to go meet with the suburban mayors. I have a quarterly meeting with them right after this.